We've been talking on my channel a lot about insurance, the insurance Armageddon and insurance getting unaffordable. And in this video, we're going to talk about homeowners insurance because I was waking up this morning and I read this article basically talking about homeowners are losing 90% of cases against Florida's biggest insurer. And I made a video the other day saying that health insurance might not be worth it because the premium are so expensive, 20,000, 30,000. And then if you have something, then you're going to have to pay even more. You have to reach your deductible. So before you even go to the doctor and they're going to start picking up a tab, you have to pay $30,000. And in the state of Florida, the biggest insurer is Citizen. And when you have an insurance company winning 90% of cases, this is just absolutely crazy. And before last year, they won about one in every other one. So they won about 50% of them, and now they're winning 90%. So what has changed? So they basically said, we're going to change the law, and instead of going to a real court with your peers, you're going to go into the Division of Administrative Hearings. And there you're going to have a court, and you're going to go get your trial done. And what kind of came out of this is if you had a $300,000 case against the insurance company, and in cases like this, we've seen people getting $400,000 to $300,000 cases worth of damages and everything else, and they'll settle $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. And it is absolutely crazy when you're thinking about paying into the system thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars. And Jeffrey has paid in, and he has an estimated $200,000 in repair, but Citizen denied his claim, and they offered to settle for $5,000, and that's what he's taken. And there's other people on here that said, I had a claim for $40,000, and they offered me $500, so rather take $500 than nothing. So now, imagine you go into Chipotle, you go into a restaurant, and every 1 out of 10 times you actually get your food. You pay for 9 and you get your food once. How many times would you go back to that restaurant? That is the success rate of them actually paying out and you getting something. So absolutely detrimental. And in the state of Florida, how many times are you going to go and rebuild your property? When a storm hits, when it gets flooded, how many times? Is it one time? Is it 2, 3, 4? How many times are you going to dedicate your time, your effort into this? And I have this woman right here, and she's talking about her situation. So let's watch this one. But before we do, please, if you like this type of content, like and subscribe. It would really help out my channel. So let's watch it.
In 2020, our house flooded with Hurricane Ada. It flooded again in 2023 with Idalia. And after that, we were like, we don't want to do this again. This is terrible. And we contracted with a house raising company. We signed a contract December of 2023. We submitted for permits the end of June 2024. And we've been waiting. And while we were waiting, Hurricane Debbie came through and almost flooded us. I paddleboarded to work. Hurricane Helene came and actually did flood us. And then Milton, there was no flooding, but obviously the house was already pretty demolished at that point. I honestly feel like we were super patient, but it came to a point where we're looking hurricane season in the eye and we need to get back in our house someday. And we decided to raise it up without a permit. It took about a month for us to get a code violation. And then we did get a stop work order 2 days ago. But today my husband did a bunch of running around and different phone calls, and we finally got the permit approved about 15 minutes ago, which was super exciting. And obviously now we can continue to move forward and hopefully get back into our home soonish. The permitting process here in St. Petersburg has been absolutely awful, but I know that the people working for the city have been working their butts off. And so there's a couple people that we wanted to thank. Gary did our final review and gave us approval. Rick helped us talk to somebody who was working from home and get things pushed through. And Ms. Haida Harris called the payment processing office to make sure that this happened today. We are very, very grateful. My husband also wrote down Tom because he left the stop work order. Either way, thank you, Tom.
So now I'm asking you, what chances do you think that you have of getting your house flooded in a storm like this? Or just making a claim in general? Or is it 1 out of 1,000? 1 out of 500,000? What do you think the chances is that if you're going to move to Florida and buy a house, what do you think the chances is? I have it right here, 1 in 13, and it is absolutely brutal. So you know that 1 in 13 every year that your house might be hit, and you got to come up with some money and repair it. And you saw this young lady basically talk about, oh my gosh, we had to rebuild so many times. And I got another video showing here in a little bit of what it really takes once your house gets flooded like that to rebuild it. And basically, when you're going to be in a situation like that, how many times can you physically and emotionally and mentally keep going? Because yeah, you might have family, you love the beach, you love the weather, but at what point is it like it's too much? I don't want to do this no more. Let me just skedaddle and let me go and and pay rent somewhere. Because even if the house is paid off, if it's floods every year, every other year, your insurance premiums are going to be through the roof. And if it floods every other year, you're going to have to pay as much insurance to rebuild that whole place. And so let's watch this person basically talk about what she does when what happened and how she basically went through the whole process of rebuilding.
If you wonder what happens after your house floods from a random pipe burst, this is the full process from start to finish. What is like a lake? The entire process took a total of 7 weeks, but once we finally got all the water physically off the floor, we immediately put fans in the house to try to dry it up and called insurance. One pro tip is do not wait to call insurance even if it's a small leak, because we ended up ripping up all the floors in the house that day. Then they put in fans in every single room. We also added a dehumidifier, which makes your room very, very hot and sounds so loud. They also offered us a free hotel that would be covered by insurance, but instead I chose to stay at the house sometimes, but if the dehumidifier was inside the house, I went and stayed with my aunt and uncle, or I was traveling. All these clothes have to go somewhere because it's going to get so dusty everywhere in the house. We started the process of moving all of our clothes into storage or into the garage, picked out what wood we wanted, and they started bringing that in, which took about a week to get in. They covered up everything in the house, including the kitchen, the furniture, the TVs. This is where the fun really starts. The sanding of the house feels like a earthquake. It shook the whole house, and the dogs were not having it. Each room took about 2 days, maybe 3 days to complete, depending on how big it was, but watching them put down this glue was so interesting to me. The process went room by room, but every single time that they went into a new room, they would have to move the furniture into another room, so basically the entire house has been a mess for weeks. The process of putting down the floor in every single room took about a week and a half to 2 weeks, but once we got all of that down, we made sure to change every single water line underneath all of our sinks in our house. Had to get that top of the notch line because we don't want that again. Now it was time to move on to the baseboard, so they replaced every single baseboard in the house, and then we had to have painters come in and paint it to the correct color. The water damage had even made some of the baseboards and door frames deteriorate. So now that we got the new floor, baseboards, everything painted, it was time to start moving things back into the house to make this house feel and look like a home again.
So we now saw that this woman, one of them just propped up her house, and the other one, basically from a piper, had to redo the whole house. 7 weeks worth of work. And now, if you're in a state like Florida where there's a natural disaster and your house floods and all of the other houses flood too, you're going to wait way longer for contractors to come in, and it's going to be way more expensive because supply and demand. And then there's going to be people that are going to rip you off and everything else. But at least this other woman had insurance, and it looks like they probably paid up a little bit because Citizen, man, they'll just settle with you. And this is what gets me the most. When you go out, you buy insurance, and you think, hey, I'm paying in for years, for decades, no claim, no nothing. Then you have a catastrophic accident, and then they hire lawyers with your money that you've paid for decades, and they'll hire the best lawyers. Then they'll sue you and say, or then they say, you know what? We're going to actually hire that lawyer to defend us so we don't have to pay. So, absolutely detrimental when you think about the concept of I'm giving you money, you're supposed to protect me, but then I get a lawyer, and you get a lawyer to fight my own claim that I've actually paid in for so many years. So, absolutely brutal. And I get why people get so mad at insurance, because when you have insurance claims, they're just going to skyrocket. And Florida is one of the states that has one of the most claims. Your premiums are going to be sky high. And if you're going to be moving or relocating to that area, you know that 1 in 13 chance that your house this year is going to have an accident, wind damage, might be something else, just 1 in 13. And I'm always like, man, you got to protect your assets. You got to make sure you know what you So I always say you need to know what you get yourself into. And maybe in a high risk area like that, you're better off renting. So I checked with AI. How do I get out of my lease if my house gets destroyed? Florida, 7 days. After it happens, you can write your landlord, say, hey, this is not livable. Here's my 7 day notice and prorate it. Give me my money back, and you deal with it. You deal with the consequences. But I hear all these yappers online keep saying, you need to buy, you need to buy. And so sometimes it is really worth renting your house and renting someplace, renting a condo, renting something. Put the money in the stock market and say, if it does happen, my $300,000 or $400,000 down payment on an $800,000 house is secure. Because what if the insurance doesn't pay? Because there's been so many people in that article that I showed you that said we had $200,000 in damages and insurance paid for five. And so who's going to come up with that difference? And it's most likely going to be you, the homeowner. And what do? You either take it out of your house, out of your equity, or you take out a new loan to kind of fix a construction loan or something else. But now, if you do not have that much equity, let's say your house doesn't appraise for a HELOC, or your house can't go and you can refinance and take some money out. All of a sudden, you basically have a complete liability. You can't live there because it's contaminated. You can't really do anything else besides just having it sit there, and insurance is going to give you $5,000, basically a big FU, and you're just like, okay, now what? And then you can find a righteous lawyer or something else to kind of move it all along, but you're in a between a rock and a hard place. And so the best option I would think is, and this is kind of just me thinking out of the fly, is just rent. Just rent. If you're in a high risk area, so in Redfin or Zillow, you can check how likely a natural disaster is going to hit. And it will tell you your property might flood or is very likely to flood in the next 10 or 30 years. And so then you can be like, maybe I shouldn't. And maybe I shouldn't buy. Maybe I should rent. And some of these people that are online are saying, oh, housing market will always be high. Housing market super area dependent. Yeah, it is. But then you have to depend, what if I just spend my money somewhere else? What if I just go down there, kind of rent and not worry about it? And if something happens, I jet set out and I'm not attached to the house. Because if you're going to spend that much money, like the first woman that we saw, she must feel attached to her house. I mean, it flooded a few times and she's still there rebuilding it. And the emotional toll is like beyond anything I could do, because it's going to consume your whole life. You're going to rebuild. You're going to start watching the weather forecast, because if there's going to be storms coming, you don't want to be right there again where it floods again. So you're like hoping and praying that please don't hit us. Please don't hit us. And so you're going to have PTSD basically from hurricanes and winds and floods and everything else. So then, is it still worth it? Is it still worth it for you? I have no idea, but people still, I want to live on the beach. I want to live with palm trees and I want to do all that. It's like, great, rent the place, or make sure you're so much inland that it's not going to flood. Because if it's going to flood, insurance, you have $200,000 in damages, and you're going to root up your whole life. You're going to have to move to a hotel. It's contaminated. Mildew's going to grow. Your health's going to deteriorate because of breathing in all that water, everything else. And then they're like, there's $500,000 in damages. Yeah, here's a check for $10,000. Grab it on the way out and make sure you signed the waiver that you're not going to ever sue us again over this. So yeah, this is life of insurance. So it's almost better to think, okay, let me just put this into a savings account or into the stock market and just kind of let it ride. Because if you pay in $10,000, $20,000, or $30,000 over the whole lifetime, and then they're going to deny your claim, or you're going to say, the stock market guy go down 20, 30%. Even that, you still have at least more than you would have if you'd have paid all that money into insurance. So is insurance really worth it? If I'm looking at these cases and I'm looking at all these people, I don't know, because I do think you get what you pay for. Well, man, I'd hard have to think about now if I would get insurance again, Or if I would get insurance if I bought a place in Florida. There's other places inside the United States that don't need insurance or that don't have these natural disasters. And you can get away with low insurance because, there's no hurricanes, there's no tornadoes, there's no floods, and not really high winds and no fires. So I'm pretty decently off with covering minimal insurance. But now, looking at how everything is going and looking at the lay of the land and how everything is, I'm just like, man, is this something you really want to get yourself into? And you feel like, I'm going to sign on that dotted line, I'm going to take out a 30-year mortgage, and I'm going to do the whole 9 yards of home ownership. You need to know that it might become really, really ugly with homeowners insurance, because if you have a certain amount of budget allowed to pay for homeowners, to pay for housing, and all of a sudden those rates keep going up and up and up, and you have a mortgage and your mortgage company is going to say, you know what, you need insurance on that, it's going to be very, very hard for you. And don't do something that you cannot reverse. And if you buy now and property values go down or sideways and you can't get rid of it, and all of a sudden it's going to sit vacant for a long time, you're going to be stuck. So make sure that you are not stuck like Chuck, and you're going to make decisions for your future self to thank you. And this is what I'm constantly talking on my YouTube channel. If you want to do something, if you want to be a homeowner, that is great. But maybe you need to look at it. And I've seen people in her comment section be like, yeah, owning a home in Florida, probably not the smartest idea in 2025 going forward. Was it beforehand? Probably. But if you rent, you let the landlord take care of it. Oh, it flooded? Yeah, let me take my dogs, let me take my valuable stuff, and I'm out. And you're like, yeah, you know what? You can even keep the security deposit. I'll file a homeowner's claim. Maybe I'll get something, maybe not, but I'm out. And if you're going to rack up that much of a debt for a house, and all of a sudden you're like, you know what? I don't know if I can keep doing this, rebuilding, doing it all. You're probably not alone. And yeah, if you're in it and you're going to keep rebuilding, how many times do your neighbors can redo it? How many times can the community keep rebuilding? Because at one point you're just fighting against gravity. And I was in Florida, I think I was in Tampa or somewhere, where the hurricane hit after, and the dude owned the shop. He said he got flooded twice now, and he said insurance paid the first time, the second time they said nope. And he said if it happens the third time, they're going to cancel on him. So he's like, I'm going to put the shop up for sale, I'm going to be done, and I'm going to move to, I think he said Michigan or somewhere, where he has family where there's no natural disasters. So yeah, people are leaving, and it's going to be interesting to see the census coming out here with all these vacant homes Florida has, and see if it's still the number one spot where people are moving to, or if people had enough of the storms, the floodings, and the rebuilding, and are saying, it's nice to visit during wintertime and I can rent, and during the summer, during the crazy months, I'll go some other place. And maybe it's Las Vegas, where we don't really have that. Look at that blue sky. We have a little wind, but most of the times it's pretty decent. And yeah, look at that blue sky, no hurricanes, no tornadoes, not a lot of earthquakes. And we do have some flooding down at the strip, but that's kind of it. The rest is actually they've done pretty decent job of making sure that this place doesn't flood. And yeah, you get weather like this in September, and it's clear blue sky. I mean, if you're from Europe, like Switzerland, Germany, if you're from England, UK, and you're looking at that, I mean, this is unheard of. This is like desert living. This is where it's at. Look at that. I'm still amazed. I lived here for 4 years now, and it's like every day is like unbelievable. So yeah, this kind of my happy place. So yeah, if you haven't, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.